This episode contains sensitive content. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact. And we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group.
Hello, welcome back, everyone. We are very excited to have a guest on the podcast with us today. Of course, I'm always joined with Trent. Hello, Trent.
Hello.
And I'm also joined by the host of the Truth That Heals podcast, Ryan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me here today.
We were saying before we start recording, we've been trying to get together for a while now. We both have pretty busy schedules, but just glad we finally were able to connect. No doubt with your podcast that you do, you dive into similar topics, but also you jump into, pretty much anything you want, your heart's desire. It seems like your podcast is a very open platform for discussion, which I think is great.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to keep it open as much as I can.
How many have you done?
I have two podcasts. I have this one, The Truth That Heals, and then I have another one that I started recently. The other one has like maybe 24 episodes, and the other podcast is more light, more chill, because The Truth That Heals can be very, at times, just diving into trauma, things like that. So I needed something more. So altogether, maybe like about almost 200.
Wow.
Now, The Truth That Heals, when you started this, was that something from the get-go of your podcast that you wanted it to be this trauma-informed and, grounded conversation about, I guess, perils that people go through? Has that always been the intent?
No, I started off actually wanting it to be superficial. Coming out of a cult, everything was just black and white mentality. I wanted something to just not rebel, but just be me, be free and without the chains. So my first episode, I believe, I recorded it with my phone. I was driving, just press record, and I was actually interviewing my friend who's a Mormon. And this is before I got into the whole cult stuff. But I just knew that I wanted to do podcasting. I don't know why. It was just a desire. But after thinking about it and discovering cults, shoot, I got to start exposing this part of my life.
Yeah. So as you were doing this, and obviously I want to get into eventually the full reason we have you on, because you've teased it, but you have had a similar experience of coming out of a cult. You originally, as you were having these conversations, this was something that was deep inside of you, hadn't yet got out to the world.
I first, before doing the podcast, I was doing blogs. And I would actually go like to Austin and I would just ask people who are working at a business, like a taco stand, hey, can I interview you? I have my camera. I just wanted to do something. But while doing the blogs, I was thinking to myself, like, damn, I'm interviewing people, but what about me? I have a fucking pretty amazing story. So I think that realization that I don't have to be silent all the time opened the door for me to, first of all, start the blogs, and then from there have the confidence to press record and do a podcast.
That's great. I know Trent and I are both ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. We do find that we constantly have, which we love, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses on our podcast. And I know that you've had some on yours as well. But it is always a treat. And I don't say that word lightly. I know that you've experienced some stuff like we have, but it is great to get someone on the podcast that did not come out of the Jehovah's Witness faith. So you, from my understanding, came out of a branch of Catholicism?
Yes, that's correct.
So you have a situation where you just have a passion and a need to have these conversations. And as you're having those, you're having this wake up moment.
Yeah, you said it. As I'm doing these conversations, I'm having a wake up moment, and also people in the audience have a wake up moment, especially in the beginning, because a lot of them were reacting and waking up in ways which were actually quite unkind. But I think that's a part of podcasting. Sometimes you offend people, and yeah.
How many would you say episodes you did where before you finally were like, "Oh, it's time to put my shit out there," like, on the pod?
Well, I think I did the first one with my Mormon friend. It's funny because that's a cult too. But I believe I left that podcast on because it's just the first one. I just want to save it. But I believe I did 4 or 5 afterwards, talking about like celebrities, relationships, and then I think maybe after the fifth one, I was like, dude, I got a story. So I deleted the other four, kept that first one with my
Yeah,
buddy, and I believe that's when I started to make my own voice heard.
I love it, I love it. Yeah, I think there's something really powerful with, I don't know, just it sounds so simple, but just talking.
Yeah.
Just talking with like-minded ones or even people that maybe have different opinions, but just communicating. I feel like sometimes we're in a world where we're in our own little bubble and we've lost kind of the ability, especially with social media and different things, to just have conversations. And I think it's really powerful. Ironically, people love listening to other people talking. And I think there might be a sense that they're part of the conversation, which I also love. But as someone, Trent included, I'm curious your take. I love having these conversations.
Yeah, I love listening to people. I'll say that I'm very open. I don't care if a person is left wing, right wing. I don't give a shit. If you have a story to tell or you're in some kind of a bad situation and you've gone through healing, all right, I would love to have you on the podcast because right now we're not debating, we're talking about healing. And sadly, I have received a lot of, I don't want to say threats because they're not threats, but like people who want me to not do this work. And this is the beautiful thing. There's so much division in our country, in our world. Isn't this what unites? Like just listening, have a friendly conversation, and that's what I want to do. Just bring people together.
And I think that's great. And I think that storytelling has been key to human progression over thousands of years. We see this like in hieroglyphs and Native American inscriptions on walls going back thousands of years, and just telling stories visually in writing and now in podcasting and other venues, YouTube, just a progression of what we've been doing for thousands of years. We seem to learn from other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I echo, we've also had a little bit of pushback on some of the content we put out because we've put some shit out. Like people, some people have gone on here and it's, oh, they're talking about their story and their story happens to have other people that they're talking about and those people don't want to be talked about. And it's, I don't know, I guess my opinion is, well, we try to handle it with care, but you have to allow someone to tell their story. And it is a tough situation, but my mindset is allow people their perspective in life, allow them their story. And at the same token, if the perceived negativity of this person's story, this person's life, this person's journey is because of you, the listener, one, you don't have to listen. And two, if possibly what you did to this person happened, that's on you. Like the trauma or the problems that you gave a person, it's like you can't years later be like, I don't want people to talk about that. So this shit happened, man.
Yeah.
So it's really challenging. We always try to find like the delicate space, and I've had to edit names out just to try to be aware. But we're all saying these stories have to be told. I think it's helpful for a lot of people to get their word out there and also know that you're not alone in some of the struggles of life.
I'm excited to hear about your life.
Yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of struggles, let's try to find a way to take ourselves from where you're at now, Ryan, and navigate all the way back to somewhat of the beginning to wherever you want to take it. Where does Ryan's kind of journey start that kind of leads him down a path maybe to join the religion that you joined?
Okay. I was born and raised Catholic. I wouldn't say that this movement that I joined, this cult, is known as the AHFI, Alliance of the Holy Family International. I wouldn't call it a branch of Catholicism because that would be like a branch would be like you have the Maronite Christian Catholics and you have Coptic. That would be like different churches. I would consider this. I want to make this as simple as possible. Part of the Latin Rite Church, but inside the Latin Rite, you have different movements. Like, for example, people might have heard of like the Jesuits. You have the Franciscans. You have all these different orders. But for an order to be, let's say, approved, pontifical approval, there needs to be a constitution. There needs to be all of these. They have to go through all of these things before they get that final approval, that seal of approval from the highest in the church. That doesn't take a day or two. Some orders, I believe, have taken like over 100 years.
Oh my
Either they've
gosh.
had to redo their constitution or a variety of things. Even Opus Dei, which is one of those movements, even now they're going through some critical changes or possible changes. So it's ongoing. And they're culty too, but I don't want to, that's another podcast. So with this movement, as a Catholic, I always grew up wanting to get an education, but also serve in some way, either the poor or something. And I believe the way that this group was framing it, and the founder was that this group was legit, fully recognized by the church. But as I joined and my years in there, I discovered that they would actually forge signatures of bishops. They would do loopholes. They would do a lot of deceitful things. So I wouldn't even consider them as Catholic, me personally, because all of the deception. So yeah, that's so I joined in LA after thinking, oh, that this group is legit. I'm going to make the story short, but after a year inside in Delaware, they sent me to Delaware, LA, go to Delaware. I'm like living on a farm. From Delaware, they sent me to the Philippines for 4 years, living on a farm, and they're like indoctrinating us, brainwashing us, programming, all that fun stuff. And then go back to the US. It was like back and forth. Eventually I left 11 years later. So I joined at the age of 17 under the thinking that because they also use fear. If you don't join us, God's going to, and probably you all have heard this similar language, you're going to not be following God, or you're going to be saying no to God. If that's how you want to live your life, go ahead. So my thinking was like, oh shit, like really? Yeah, God's going to curse you. Dang, all right, might as well just join. I don't want to be cursed. And
Yeah.
over the years, their narrative evolved. Like with the Jehovah's Witnesses, I think it's pretty much established what the teachings are. In the movement that I was in, the cult that I was in, the founder is still alive. And over time, I would see he would be really stretching his narrative and started picking up new things, new ideas. So during my time there, it was still evolving.
That is really interesting. I already have so many questions
Go ahead,
just from
Trent.
that
Take it
small
away.
Yeah.
amount. So, just to recap, so you were born and raised a Catholic, and essentially, this was a movement within Catholicism, basically founded by one person who's still alive. And so, you actually got to see the changes of a live movement over time.
Yes, I was considered one of the pioneers from the American, because he started off in the Philippines, and then later on I had discovered, because he talks a lot. Charismatic people, they don't know how to shut the hell up. And he was saying in one of his talks that he had another group, and that group was actually suppressed because he started off legit. He starts it off legit, but then he starts going a little bit cuckoo. And some of the members there are like, what the hell are you doing? And so, from what I'm aware of, just to simplify it, in Manila, the Cardinal Sin, I believe was a funny last name, Cardinal Sin,
Mm.
I believe he took it away from him and protected the seminarians, I guess you could say, the members, and allowed it to continue in a more non-culty way. I saw that's the best way I can describe it. But the way he perceived it, the founder was, they've stolen this from me, and he was sharing it in like one of his talks. They stole it from me. They kicked me out of the own movement that I created, and now I made this new one. I made, and he was pointing to us. So that for me was a bit of revelation, and I did hear some rumors from the other older members that yeah, he had another group, but it was taken from him, which I understand now why they would be forging signatures, and now why he's being more sneaky, because his mindset was always extreme paranoia that either the church or the Illuminati, the Freemasons are going to try to sabotage his creation.
So I'm just like Trent. There's so many questions. We really appreciate you coming on. Being raised Catholic, when you decided to go do this kind of movement and kind of move away from your family or join this additional thing, was there any conversation with your other family members, your relatives, your parents, whether they were backing your decision, like everything was just normal? Or was it like, hey, what are you doing? You're doing what? What were those conversations like?
It was a bit awkward because I was going to Catholic school in LA, and I already had my plan for life. I'm going to finish high school. I'm going to go to Cerritos College, then I'm going to go to USC. I'm going to do this, do that. But I also had openness for, because I was with the Salesians. Maybe I'll be a Salesian, or maybe just try it out after I do my education. So I had that openness already, even though there were like some pre-scandals. There was a lot in LA. I had that awareness, but I was okay with my way of thinking. This is a possible thing for me. But then because this group, they would do like missions. When I say missions, let me rephrase. They would do like events, and they would invite the youth. And so we were invited, some people, some Catholics from LA, some youth ministries were invited to Nebraska, and they were just giving like theological talks, and we'd also do like the dancing, clapping, and all that fun stuff. But then like in private, they were like, hey, like grooming, God is calling you. And one of them, supposedly, not the founder, but like one of his like top guys was like, hey, I see that God's calling you. Are you going to say no to God? So with that, even though I had my plan in life, this kind of brought a fear, because they would also say that if I didn't follow, I would be cursed. And even though I had my plan in life, I think that fear, but also it was the fear, but it was also like the promises, because if I don't join, I'm going to be cursed, but if I join, I'm going to be blessed, meaning all my family and all of the future generations, they're all going to be receiving like a thousandfold blessings. I'm going to be able to travel the world. It's like, wow, I'm going to be able to travel the world. This is all right, dude, this sounds fun, and I'm going to be blessed a thousandfold. Heck yeah, sign me up. And also it was the immaturity. So my family was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And it was a bit of a struggle, but in the end, they're like, "Well, shoot, all right, dude, yeah,
Yeah,
go."
I would imagine at that time they don't really know enough. They just go, "Oh, it's another Catholic thing. Okay, we'll trust you."
Not right
Uh,
away. It was very
oh,
frustrating, and but then because I was finishing high school, and this group had promised that I would be allowed to finish high school over in Delaware, so that kind of gave my family a bit more peace.
mm.
And actually, I didn't even finish high school until after I left.
Wow.
Trent and I, we ask this question a lot. Do the higher ranking members know what they're doing? Or do they truly believe what they're doing is correct?
Not all of them, I would say, because a lot of the people he recruited were very young. Like me, I was like 16, 17. So I think being brainwashed into this, and it's still a young group,
Yeah.
but at that time in 2004, it was much younger. I think many of us really just believe that one, he was legit, that he was honest, and then he would also use exorcism, saying that he's an exorcist. That's another thing. So I think that many of us were very gullible
Yeah.
and believed him, but there were a very small number from the higher ups who really, I believe, were and are very malicious in their intent.
And of course, they're shaping what the lower level guys do and how they think, etc.
Exactly.
Do you feel like the maliciousness was the need for power? Is it money? Like, obviously, we always talk about churches getting that tax exempt, getting the donations. What do you see looking back as were some of the primary kind of triggers for why they wanted to do this?
Mm, I one thing that got me into, and I'll answer this, but one thing that got me was when I first started my journey of educating myself was going back to Heaven's Gate. And I remember as a kid they have their websites and they were I just thought, man, these guys are kooky. But I remember the main guy, he had, or if I remember the story correctly, like there was some woman, and I think she died soon, but I think she inspired him a bit and made him think a little bit more of he has this special gift. With my founder, he's always been either he's loony or he's a con artist or he's a loony con artist, but he has connected with this woman and she's more like the logistics. She's the one kind of like calling the shots behind the scenes. And I feel like he thinks he's in charge, but she's the one steering the boat. Yeah, so
Uh,
with them, with the founder, I think there is a belief that he has a gift and he wants to he says he wants to save the world kind of thing, but I from his actions I think he wants people to love him, to come to him, to seek guidance and counsel. He wants to appear as wise and as saintly. Now the one behind the scenes, she wanted power. She wanted people to really just cower before her and like they want people to feel shame. And he does that a bit too, but I felt that she really wanted to be domineering.
So maybe in both cases, some narcissism.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, man. Yeah.
can you pinpoint some of these moments? I don't know where things were starting to crack, where things weren't aligning. Maybe it was a different in doctrine. I don't know. Do you have a few of those that you could share?
Being there for 11 years is a lot. And one of the things that they would do is there's a lot of sleep deprivation. And I think that kept us, especially being so young, from really using, at least for me, using my mind, using my reasoning. But something that there were some things that kind of bothered me was that, okay, they claimed to be Catholic, but in private, they were always talking against either Rome or the bishop. And I'm seeing like, but I can't push back. I'm very young. If you have questions, you get punished. Another thing was like with the exorcisms Catholic in Catholicism, there is a procedure. There's like a role. You can't just. He was doing it like giving candies. Like, all right, we're gonna do exorcism today, and they would do exorcism on me. And at the time, I'm like, I can't say anything, but hey, they're like, you're Catholic, but and so I think those things started to help me crack, but then they would bring back the fear because some people I believe really had mental problems in from who were recruited. Lack of sleep, lack of food. Every day we're being told about punishment, curses. So some people cracked and they'd go crazy. And so seeing them like flopping on the floor, or sometimes they'll be hitting themselves or they'll be throwing stuff and
Oh.
wailing. I was like, I'm good. I'll just stay here for a bit. So yeah, but that eventually helped me to start cracking a bit.
What
This
was the
is
final crack? What was the thing that made you say, absolutely not, I'm done?
That was even though I had my final no that I need to get out of here. It took me a while still. But what actually happened was that the Vatican started sending delegates to come and investigate, and
mm,
so they would come. They would bring canon lawyers, a bishop, psychologists, and I forgot what else. But they would bring people, and as this
you saw like auditors come in basically.
they came, but I pretty much every time they would come, I was in a different because we had a bunch of houses. We had some in the Philippines, Australia, United States, And I remember like right before they did the one in the Philippines, I was sent to the US. And after a while, one of the main guys in the Philippines came over to the US and he was telling us about it. And he was complaining. He was like, "Can you believe this? Like the Vatican, like they send these delegates to come and they're scrutinizing us. Like how much of a persecution?" And that started it for me because in my mind, I was thinking, damn, I've been here at that time. Up to that time, I had been there for like 9 years.
Mm,
And all we had done was scrutinize everybody else. How
yeah.
everybody is horrible, how everybody sucks, everyone else is going to hell. And I was thinking, like, damn, like the church, which you claim you're a part of, rightfully is doing a proper investigation and actually bringing like psychologists, canon lawyers, and people who know their stuff to do a proper investigation. And you're complaining. So I think that was like, that was really the main start for me to start distancing myself. But the hard thing was actually leaving because of the fear of if you leave, you're going to be cursed and your family is going to be cursed and all that, you know.
Yeah. I do want to talk about the process of leaving because Trent and I obviously had our own leaving that we had to do as well from exiting the Jehovah's Witness faith. But before we get there, like the questions continue to populate in my mind. So again, I'm very grateful for you to put yourself out there because you have a very unique situation. And I always tell this with people on the podcast. You, like others, have a really good ability to just quickly talk about these moments with a level of brevity. And this is really heavy stuff. Your formative years, 17 to maybe about 26, 27, were in this really high controlling environment that was based around control and fear. And so it's wow. I'm personally like so glad you're out.
Thank you.
I'm personally grateful that you have gotten to a space mentally and physically where you can start to tell your story because even just some of the stuff you've touched on is like this is really heavy. I wanted to ask you mentioned fear. I think you mentioned sleep deprivation. What were some of the fears that you can talk about that they dangled in your path? I would assume not making it to heaven and some of the traditional things you might think of, but were there some fears that were more in the immediate in terms of punishment, or what was that? And what was that life like being surrounded by the fear?
There was a corporal fear of being punished, and that as well as the fear of humiliation. So they would use this psychological fear to really get a person to stay in line. So when I say corporal fear, they would suppress food, sleep
Mm,
at times, especially as you get deeper into it. Initially, not as hard because they want you to win you over, but there would be eventually there'd be beatings with like we make our own whips, or if you don't have your own whip, then we have belts. We just either whip each other as a form of like penance or whip ourselves. Also, sleep deprivation, that was also a big thing. They would take away our, like, for example, if you're late for a schedule, whether it be rising or you're late for prayers, that would be, for example, for breakfast, it's going to be half breakfast. Okay, now if you have two violations, okay, no breakfast. Or if you break silence, then that's no lunch. So things like that really kept us like, oh shoot, like we better stay disciplined. And also the psychological fear of the humiliation, because sometimes they would call us in front of everybody, call us out. Or I didn't really do this too much, but let's say, for example, prayers in the chapel was finished and I left my prayer book. So afterwards, the one of the leaders or of that small group will get my prayer book and put it like on a rope and tie it around me, and that's like a reminder that to everybody, oh, I left this, I'm sloppy. So it goes two ways: the fear of what my body is going to be receiving and getting, and the shame that comes from the community.
That
wow.
is true abuse. That's abuse on so many levels, and I'm sorry you went through that, man.
Do you recall having moments where you had, I don't know, like secret allies where you could talk about some of the stuff that you went through, or was there also a fear of being open about that with others?
Inside the group, we would always be like encouraging, hey, for the glory of God, let's keep, like, we would try to be encouraging. There was one time, because in my first year there was a bully. He was like one of the, we would call him a formator, but he was a bully. He was a complete asshole, but I had to
Hmm.
take it. But there's a time where in that first year, like one time, I really wanted to go home, and some of my brothers who joined at the same time as I did were like, "Come on, bro, you got this." And after that, like, it left me, and I was like, I was sold. I was all in, but never like really alliances. When someone is going through, and we would call it inside the group, the founder would say that some members are in crisis. Crisis meaning that they're being they are being infested by Satan. Satan is pretty much whispering in their ear, like, to leave. So the rest of the community, don't stay near them, get away from them because they're infested. And that member needs to go to the chapel in silence and pray until he's fixed, he or she.
So it's like a form of shunning.
Yeah, inside the community, inside the compound.
Wow. So no one from what you could remember ever was open to be like, oh my gosh, like we're all like we're being whipped, we're being starved, we're being sleep deprivation. There wasn't an air of this is wrong. Like everyone bought in.
It wasn't done as quick. It was very, like how I mentioned earlier, that first stage is the love bombing, and they would introduce it very slightly. Okay, today we're not going to be eating. And the fasting that we would do, it was always, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No, it's just bread and water, either bread and water or maybe a few crackers, biscuits, or maybe like a vegetable soup for dinner, but very light. And that's how they got us to. And also the reasoning, like, why are we doing this? We're doing this as a form of prayer, to maybe we can pray for somebody, think of somebody. So it's a motivation. But then over time, I didn't see this as an abusive tactic until my last year in the community. I was in the Philippines, and at that time I was kind of like wandering around doing my own shit. Not really rebellious, but yeah, rebellious. And I shit you not, I was reading Oliver Twist, and it's not like a book that I'm supposed to read, because we're only supposed to be reading books by the founder, or yeah, pretty much, or of the institution. And I'm reading Oliver Twist because I'm rebelling, and there's a part there where I think, like, the orphans, because you have these orphans and they're hungry, and I can't remember exactly, but like one of the guys was like upset. You gave them more food. Don't you know that if you keep them hungry, that they won't be able to fight back? If you keep them like weak, they won't be able to fight back. You need to keep them weak. And I'm reading this, and I was like, whoa,
Oh my gosh.
Oliver
Yeah.
Twist
Wow.
What a
woke me up.
twist.
Yeah, what a
This is what we were talking about, how storytelling can help humans just by reading and listening. That's crazy.
it took me
Do
over
you
10 years to realize it, though.
We can relate, man. Like we both grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses, and when that's what your foundation is and what you know to be truth, you don't even realize that there could be other thoughts out there. This is life. And it's so sad that so many people are raised non-secular. They're not raised to choose what the reality is. And it just becomes a shame when, I don't know, the group that they grow up in is just so damaging. I guess the other question I have is oftentimes there's kind of these hierarchies and these things. Did you find yourself moving up in this hierarchy, being there so long?
I
What
mean,
did that look like?
but you're not really ever moving up, because I say that because, like, one of the members, a friend of mine, we're still best buddies. He became a priest in the community, and he was telling me that his education was actually like fabricated. Like, they fabricated his credentials, his transcripts, and showed it to the diocese. Yeah, this guy's ready to be ordained. And to be ordained, there needs to be consent, free consent. And from what my buddy was telling me was that it was like a shotgun wedding. And so they allowed him to become a priest, but when he became a priest, he actually took his role seriously. So they sent him to Nebraska to be in charge of a community. But as this is happening, he was studying canon law. He's studying how things actually flow in the parish, in the church, in the state. And he was recognizing that what this community was doing was actually totally against canon law and the law of the state. So he started, from our conversations, pushing back. And the founder, being super smart, would say, I'm a canon lawyer. But my buddy would say, hey, I have canon law paragraph this that's contradicting. And so what happened was my friend started getting shunned by the community. And so going back to your question, like going higher up, I don't think that anybody goes up in the community. I think that there's only two, the founder and the woman behind him doing the logistics, and they put people in place who they think are just going to be puppets until they no longer are puppets, as what happened to my friend, and he eventually left as well.
I'm glad you got to leave and you guys still have that connection. Shunning's real, man. It's such a tactic that they use. Before we continue with some of my thoughts and questions, did they ever put you in a position where you'd have to administer some of this punishment? I think you touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious if you were maybe for the younger ones.
Okay, so there were some punishments that, like in one year, maybe 2013 or maybe before, I can't remember, maybe before. But there was in one, because I went to several communities. We're always recruiting, and there's a house on Jackson Street. There's another community over in Verde Road. It's just, and they're a bit different. So each house would have their set of rules by their community. And I was in one community, and like for we would call them snipers. Sniper
Mm,
is, for example, prayer time. A sniper would be the person spying, and yeah, spying, whatever, and they would be ticking down, taking note of every time somebody was sleepy or someone was late, and they would jot down how many times they nodded their head or how many times they dozed off, and in the end, like the ones who would have the most the most violations, like the standard was like 10 flagellations, 10 whippings.
mm,
Sometimes I would just offer to take it for them and I'd be the one. Other times we'd smack each other. Oh
mm.
shoot, because I was sleepy as well. All right, so I guess you smack me, I smack you. All right.
Now, is this something like, yeah, even though you're getting smacked, I guess just are we talking about like intense pain, or is it like you just need to go through the motions?
Again, depending. There was a time like during Lent. So like usually for those violations, if we like just did it half hard, not too hard. But there's a time during Lent where like they were telling us, think of the passion, imagine yourself as the Roman soldiers. And yeah, it was a bit more brutal. And that was like, I don't know. Remember, I gave somebody like 50 lashes. They gave me 50
Mm,
lashes. And we were bruised. Also, emotionally, it was like, and I've spoken to this guy, like, we're still friends. The one who, I mean, we beat each other up. But yeah, it was a very painful thing. But we understand that it wasn't because we wanted to. It's hard because you hear about Nexium, how they freaking did some crazy shit there
oh,
on the bodies. But I'm just relieved that I've said my apologies to those who I may have hurt, and we have that understanding that it was never like intentional. And some of these people I knew from even before the cult, so it's a double, it's a pain, not only physically but emotionally, because there's like a friendship that even goes
yeah.
beforehand.
So you have reached out to and still connected with a lot of these people. So that's good. And I guess you feel like a lot of the people you grew up with, they are getting out.
I don't. I think a lot have left
Yeah.
after the Vatican got involved. There was like just so many, like an exodus of people leaving, but because they're so secretive, I don't know what's happening at the moment with the
Yeah.
people in there.
So
It gets,
I want to ask about
yeah,
the
yeah.
flagellation. So my understanding has always been that, like, per the Catholic Church, self-flagellation or flagellation is considered to be like an extreme punishment. Is that still true? Like
Mm,
Catholic Church proper?
I don't think there's like actual like a doctrine on that or even in the catechism, but from my understanding from the years, like fasting, some people use it in extreme ways, and that's up to you. Some people have used, and they would call it the discipline. If you read like a spiritual book of like saints in the past, they'll say that they disciplined themselves as a form of, and I think some priests might need to be doing this instead of touching kids. Maybe they need to do some, get your freak on somewhere else or beat yourself up. But the church doesn't promote it. Some have used it, but it's never been a promotion. But I don't think it's ever been do it to each other. If someone wants to do it to themselves, I don't know.
So then this group was really going above and beyond. They're doing more than the church would require.
Yeah, the church doesn't require any of that. It's just
Yeah.
some would call it a spiritual devotion to help someone go away from the flesh. Me, I don't do it anymore, obviously. But the way that this leader, the cult founder, would always say that he would give an example. Today, I noticed that 5 of our brothers and sisters have left our group. So I was crying all day. I was beating myself. So he would always use it as, I think he would use it as a way for us to pity him, where if you're fasting or doing something like that, it's more like personal, like you should keep that to yourself.
It's probably also, hey, I'm doing these things too. If the leader's doing these things, we're all doing these things. We're all fasting. We're all receiving these punishments. It definitely creates a mindset of we're all in this together. It's happening from the top.
Oh yeah.
Um, so,
I have a question too, real quick. So you were raised Catholic. You were part of this really unfortunate, like, subsect or movement. Where do you land now? Are you still religious? Are you Catholic? How do you identify, if I could ask?
Yeah, absolutely. I am Catholic. Some people who know me, or let me rephrase that. Some Catholics might say, "Oh my gosh, no, no way! This guy's, he's not Catholic at all. They'll say he's liberal or something." And then others might say, "Oh, he's too conservative." I let people use their imaginations. I just say that I'm Catholic, and all I can say is that when I first came back out of the cult, I went to church in LA, and I was like, my body was waiting for people to be in the back taking notes. And the thing with it was that you can just go to any church and just go pray and leave, and nobody says shit. So, or they'll
yeah,
say hi, hey, what's up, and that's it. And so I was like, okay, it took my body a while to get used to that because I was just waiting for somebody to be at the door with like stones and to start like throwing them at me. Like literally, I'd be like in the back like a crazy person. But now, like, I'll go to church, I do my thing, leave, and that's it.
I love it. Yeah, your nervous system. That's all you knew, man. Like yeah, you were just waiting for some sort of punishment or some sort of conversation about doing something wrong. Those fear tactics. I'm glad that you were able to find, I don't know, the real Catholicism, like the stuff that's not supposed to be so hardcore. You're supposed to just have your connection with your God and go down that path. So I love the fact that you were able to find what you were looking for when you were younger.
Yeah,
Um,
because one trend we see is typically, especially ex Jehovah's Witnesses, you can't really leave the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses and still be a Jehovah's Witness because they shun, they do all these things. And so many people lose their faith entirely in religion or move to a different form of spirituality or religion. So it's interesting in your case because you were inside of a cult within a religion, and you have that ability to keep your religion while leaving the cult.
I want to touch on that real quick because after I left, they told us, or they told me, sorry, to stay away from them for 6 months so that I can, I don't know, I just said stay away. And then later on, maybe you can touch base. So I touched base with one of them in Alabama. Say, look, I've been away for actually a year. I would like to, because they have, I think it's more of a shunning thing. They want you to feel isolated and they give you a year or 6 months so that you have in mind, okay, after 6 months, I'll go back. So I called them up. Hey, like, I would like to touch base with you guys. I would like to make peace. He's like, sure, come to Alabama. The founder is going to be having a retreat. So I go to Alabama, and the sisters, the one who are under that one woman who's doing all the logistics, they kick me out. They start yelling at me. So even though I was out of it, I still wanted to be
On
like
good terms.
not only on good terms, but in some way, in a lesser form, involved. And I'm bringing this up because you were talking about how some Jehovah Witnesses, even though when they leave, like you're gone, you can't be like out and Jehovah Witness. So I try to make that peace and maybe some kind of a unity with them. And then they started yelling at me, so I started yelling back. Fuck you, bitch. Oh, and I was like, really? All right, this is how you treat me? I bust my ass. I bust my ass off for 11 years, and then, like, why can't I go to the retreat? You're an ex member. I'm like, so what? I've been here. I did 11 years. I did more shit than you. Let me in. They're like, oh no. All right. So I was outside blowing off steam, and there was a friend who was actually there, and she was involved, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and she saw me like frustrated. So then the lady comes, the one who is the second in command, and this is in Alabama. We're outside, and she starts yelling at me, saying, "How dare you come over here and start this?" And I yell at her back. I say, "You're not going to talk to me like that." So we start yelling at each other, and then she notices that there are people walking around, and she's telling me, "My gosh, Ryan, okay, calm down." I said, "I'm not going to fucking calm down." She's like, "People are listening." I said, "You had no problem yelling at me in front of everybody. So you have no problem. I'm going to yell at you back. How do you like it? Do you like it?"
Love
She
it.
said, "Oh, why are you being such an asshole?" I'm like, "I'm being the asshole? Okay, I have the balls to come here and make peace with y'all. Don't you know how many brothers and sisters have left and they're heartbroken?" And she was telling me, "Oh no, that's not true. We take good care of them." And I called her out on her bullshit. I said, "Look, before I came to Alabama, I was in LA. I spoke a lot of ex-members there. I was in Australia. I've spoken to ex-members in Canada, in Philippines, and they all say that you treat them like shit. So don't bullshit me." So in the end, she's, "Oh, yeah, you're right," and she's like laughing about it. But I think that was like the point where I don't know. It's like, what is my role? Like I still want to, besides being Catholic, be part of this group because they said to stay 6 months away and to touch base with them. But here they are. All they wanted to do was shun me and put me down. So then this lady goes, "Look, what do you want?" I said, "Look, I just came here because my 6 months of isolation is finished. I came here for some spiritual nourishment and maybe to talk to the founder, Father Bing. Let me talk to this guy. I deserve that. I was in the group for 11 years. Okay, we'll arrange it." So they have a timer. There's someone outside the door timing it, and all he's doing is telling me, one, that I need to lay low for another year because I'm a scandal, and two, that if I say anything, that I'm committing a sin that is going to lead me to hell because gossiping is a sin that leads people to hell. So after that, I was disturbed and I said, "You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna start talking. I'm gonna start talking about this."
Wow. So through that experience, you actually didn't go back there with the intent of what actually transpired.
No,
It,
it's opposite.
uh, you
What's
actually, you somewhat were still believer of the movement, and through
They pushed you out.
Yeah, they did. They pushed me out. But when I was leaving, the woman, it's not even her real name, but she goes by Mother Agnes. She goes, "You know what? If you would have only been more polite and had spoken to me better, we could have given you a role where you could have been doing missions in some other state or even in Europe." And I said, "I don't care about that. You think I care? I don't care about that. I just came here to make peace, and then you guys don't want that. Okay, bye.
She was trying to play on maybe someone's pride or ego, or maybe hoping you also wanted a little bit of power.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is like you have the parable of the prodigal son. And like in this instance, you really were like a prodigal son. You're coming back, you're wanting to make peace, and they completely reject you. And that just seems so seems the opposite of how it should be.
But I agree with what you said is they had a feeling that you would be toxic, that you were going to damage the group. So the fear of their maybe loss of a tight control more than likely would have been through you. And even in that moment, you had such agency to speak up for yourself, which I'm sure you also reflect on. You're like, dude, I couldn't have done that even a year previous. In my mind, that would be very challenging to do based on everything that you grew up with this group. And there you are, standing up to second in command. No doubt that had to have been a very transformative experience for you.
If they would have just shut the hell up and allowed me to go to the retreat and sit in the conference room or whatever, I would have been as docile as a baby goat, a kid, a lamb, whatever. But then, so when she started getting all, and the thing was because there's also a trauma of, and maybe as Jehovah's Witnesses, you can also, it might resonate, of not having a voice, of being silent, of you have to take it. When they shun you, you shut the hell up, you take it. And she wanted that dynamic of her being in charge and me being the bitch. That's how it is. I didn't see it like that anymore. So look, hey, you're not going to talk to me like that. So you're coming here being rude. Hey, you're not going to freaking talk to me. Who the hell do you think you are? Who do you think you are, Ryan? I said, you're not going to talk to me. I'm not Brother Joseph anymore. So
Yeah.
you want me to talk to you respectfully? Then you talk to me. It goes both ways. And she's like, there are people watching. You don't give a shit. You don't like me talking to you.
Well, and it probably was weird for her because you're in that group at a power at her power level. It was probably like, I'm not used to being talked to this way. It was probably a weird experience for her as well that she couldn't control you. That's really interesting. So you left, but you didn't mentally leave.
No, it took me a long ass time, dude.
Yeah. So what was the timing of all this? From you had your cracks, you decided to leave, but you still believed, and then you came back, and then to where you are now. What was that time frame?
So when I had that argument with her and with the founder, it was like in 2017. And I was just like so bombed because damn, I just lost my ticket to heaven kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think maybe 2019, 2020 was when I started seeing more content on cults. Like I saw, like I mentioned earlier, Heaven's Gate. I was like, this is interesting. And then I saw, I believe it was on Hulu at the time, Cults and Extreme Beliefs. And she was like navigating through the different stories. And that's how it opened the door. And I even spoke with Yana a lot, had her on my podcast. She was
Oh,
like one of my first
wow.
guests. And it was like, whoa, shoot. And I explained to her all the things that had happened. And she was like, that's a cult. I'm like, oh shoot, all right,
You started going down the rabbit hole.
yeah, big time.
So, oh my gosh. That's amazing. I'm thankful you also started to have that level of curiosity where you felt comfortable to start diving into some of these documentaries and shows. And did you find yourself doing like some online research as well? YouTube, different, I don't know, did you get books? What was some of that path of waking up?
I did get a few books, and it's a very good question that you bring up because inside of the cult, they would acknowledge that they had been called cults
Hmm.
by other people, but they're like, we're not a cult. And I remember some material, and I probably might have I might have it in my library, I might have given it away already, but there's some materials that are from Protestants about cults, but their understanding of a cult would be anybody who doesn't practice what we practice.
Hmm.
So I think my understanding was it was a confusion. What the hell really is a cult? Because according to these Christian writers, like from the 80s or 90s, a cult would they'll only say Mormon, Jehovah Witnesses, and everything that's New Age. Anything with yoga, that's all cult. but it never gave a definition. I think going back to like it gave me a better frame of understanding what is it, not just saying something that I disagree with as a cult, but understanding that and just understanding how it works.
Yeah. I mean, with the Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't allow any kind, they've changed it now, but they didn't allow any sort of external education, no secondary schooling, college, anything after high school. And my belief at the time was they definitely didn't want you to start learning these kind of critical thinking skills. They didn't want you to have access to philosophy courses and psychology courses and the history of certain religions and things, because the more and more you start to learn, you
Hmm.
start to put the pieces together and you start to go like this is not it, man. And it's tough. We've all been through a similar journey, no doubt, of coming out and waking up, and it's a process. And one of the hopes that Trent and I have, I'm sure you have as well on your podcast, is just to have anyone come across this content and maybe they're curious, maybe they're in a high control group or a cult, and they click play and just maybe some of the narrative starts to get moving or unravel and they align and they go, oh, there's something here. I need to start the process of doing some research and then come to whatever conclusion that they want to, whether it be finding Christ in another form, maybe being agnostic or atheist. I'm a believer that it's very fluid. You need what you need now, and that it could possibly kind of change over time or really solidify. And so it's really great that, I don't know, man. Like I said before, this is one of the things that Trent and I do is we try to have just open, honest conversations. We don't want to come into conversations blind, but at the same time, Ryan, we don't know your full story, but what you're telling us is pretty amazing that you were able to get out of this and that you're here. You're a survivor. You're here now to tell your story. I'm sure you've been asked this before. Maybe you're maybe down the road, but are you going to write a book? What's going to happen here?
I've been thinking about that. I kind of want to live life a little bit more, get some more experience, and also focus on the podcast. But I was talking to some friends in LA, and I was like, "Should I write a book?" And they're like, "Hell yeah, dude!" I was like, "Should I make it like family friendly?" And oh no, you need to put all the details. Make it like rated R, rated X. So yeah, if I write a book, it'll probably be a bit graphic, just because that's the
Yeah.
reality of it.
It's what you experienced, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a possibility. Maybe we'll see. It's 2026 is right around the corner. Maybe it's a challenge that I can give myself for the new year.
Yeah, no, I'd be on the list to purchase it, man. I'm very fascinated with your story, and as you no doubt know, it's hard sometimes to get someone's whole journey in an hour or so. There's so many thoughts and stories and things that you have to unpack, and I feel like sometimes really getting those thoughts out on the page can be that avenue.
I have a question. You left,
Yeah,
and obviously, how long do you think it's been since you left? Five
left
years?
physically or like mentally all together.
Mentally.
I would say like 2019.
Okay, so 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So, what has healing looked like for you?
Healing is not giving a shit. Really, because before giving a shit about everything, oh man, oh founder's gonna be hurt, oh founder's gonna be sad. Now I don't give a shit. Just live my life, dude. But at the same time, of course, I try to be a decent person. But at the same time, like healing is not really giving a shit about because sometimes those voices from the cult era they come back. Sometimes I even have dreams about, and it feels like I'm still like in these dreams. It feels like I'm still there in the dream.
Yeah.
So I've gone back in time and I'm in the body of me during the cult days, and it feels. And I wake up like, oh, it's not real. It was just a dream. All right, live life and not allow it to hinder the rest of my day. Because before the healing, if I would have a flashback or a dream, it would get me depressed, and I'd be thinking like, am I doing this wrong? What would founder think? No, it's okay.
And have you used any therapy in your healing journey?
I try. There's some therapists who are good, but I think that there are some therapists who think they know me better than me. And then it's look, and I'll give an example. One is I think that you miss the control they had over you. And I'm just listening and listening. It's like, damn, lady, you don't know my whole story. Like when I was in there, yeah, I was in there for 11 years. Maybe there were parts and times where they were controlling a bit, but actually they had to shun me in the community because I like to be in control of myself. I wanted to do my own stuff. And so it's like going back with therapy. I think there are good therapists, but if they're not educated in cults and they see everything as like a relationship, like a dynamic, it wasn't a romantic relationship. It was very, what's the word, complex or
Hmm.
complicated. It's very complicated. So if there is going to be a therapist, I'd have to get one that knows and is trained in talking about these things, because yes, I've experienced some therapists who they know, it's like they think they know,
Yeah.
and it's no, you don't. So
Finding the right therapist is very important with what we've been through for sure.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Trent and I, obviously, we've talked about this many times, and our thoughts are is you do, and this is across any sort of trauma or abuse or things that you have to unpack and heal from, is you got to find the right one.
Yeah.
So hopefully that you keep that journey of finding the right one, even one that may necessarily not have direct overt experience with cults or high control groups. It was famously says you don't have to be an addict to help someone
Yeah.
recovering from being an addict. I do believe that there's something there, but I also can hear where you're coming from as someone who's also had therapy in the past and was going to be going to school to be a therapist. So it's
Awesome.
definitely something of mine that I want to help all those out there.
That's good.
Gosh, where to from here? So you're doing this podcast now. You clearly love to talk. You love to talk about your experience, and I think that's great. I think, yeah, as we said at the start of the podcast, talking this shit out is really important. And I think that a lot of your guests and ours, we all have our stories, man. They're all a little unique, they're all a little different, but there's a common bond of, gosh, we all went through some shit,
Yeah.
but we're finding our way to move forward. And it seems from what I see from a distance, just seeing your online presence, you're in a real good place now, man. You have a good vibe about you, a good energy, and people resonate that and respond to that. Me personally, I wish you well in your endeavors. I think Trent's going to be on your podcast, so I'm excited to see that conversation. And maybe down the road, I will as well if you'll have me. What's next on your plate other than maybe the long term maybe goal of writing some of your thoughts down? What else do you have planned?
I do have the podcast, and it's multi-directional. Like some episodes are on cults, some are just me drinking a coffee, just saying what's up. Others are just me talking with people on hearing their either their healing journey, not related to cults, or their ideas on what healing may look like. A lot of these people, they mean and they're doing well, but they'll have some spiritual stuff that I'm not educated on, but I'll still invite them on since it is called The Truth That Heals. But just for the rest, for next year, I'm hoping to have more like true crime cult stuff, but not focus on the crime. I think there are enough true crime podcasts out there. I want to focus on the healing after the bullshit that happened. How
Mm,
did the person heal, or what does justice look like?
that's awesome. We're going to put all your socials and everything in the notes, but do you want to call out some things for our guests where they can follow you, find you, some important things there?
Sure, you can follow me on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, Truth That Heals, or if not, you might find me at Ryan Anthony Hernandez. And I do have a second podcast. It's all about art and creativity, and that is called Creativity Worth Expressing, where I interview different creative people, actors, filmmakers, painters, and just hear about their process on how they've made their projects. So, yeah, you can find me in those platforms.
I don't know, as we close out, and Trent, obviously, if you have anything you want to close out with as well, by all means. But I don't know, just like key takeaways. I put myself in a place of who's listening potentially to this podcast, being in a position where you've come out of a cult. What would you want listeners to hear about your experience that would be really important, with the platform that we have?
I would say it's okay to express yourself, but just do it in a healthy way. Don't hurt yourself, don't hurt others. But if you have a story, a voice, maybe your voice has been very small because of the bullshit that happened, then write it down. But find a creative way to get your voice out there.
Love it.
I'd like to close out by just saying thank you very much. Hearing about your experience is very unique. I haven't heard an experience like this in my life. So I appreciate you sharing and want to thank you for being on the pod and want to say sorry for all you've been through, man. You had a rough experience, but I'm glad to see you're out now and helping others.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed being on your show. It was very, you guys are freaking awesome. Keep it up.
Oh, thanks,
Thanks,
man.
man.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, we look forward to continue chatting with you, my friend. And no doubt, like I said, on your podcast and just seeing each other online and whatnot. But yeah, you've been a pleasure to chat with as well. And just the way you carry yourself and how you present yourself. And I don't know, just like your unique story, it's been really heartwarming to hear just your experience, what you've come out with, and where you are now. So, thank you so much for everything. And for all our listeners, we know that time is very valuable and precious. So, thanks for spending this hour with us. And we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.ture.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.